Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. I'm your host, theFellowKGB. You can follow me on Twitter at theFellowKGB, and it's Friday evening. It's September 25th. We're going to be going over the 8 noon games that we have this weekend on Sunday. I'll probably cover the remaining games tomorrow afternoon in a podcast. But for now, we're going to take a look at the fantasyfellowship.com. You're going to click on the Week 3 start-sit charts. And we're kind of just going to, we already covered the Thursday night football game, so we're going to scroll down here and we're going to start with the Bears at the Falcons. I have my start-sit charts here. We're going to probably look at some practice reports and a couple other snaps and some usage things from last week. So on the Bears side of things, I think Mitch Trubisky, he's not a quarterback one or anything, but you can use him in Superflex leagues. I think that's a total fair play there. But the Falcons are really dinged up on defense, so I kind of like David Montgomery as an RB2. He's looked pretty good through 2 games so far, so if you own him, I think you're pretty happy with what you got. Allen Robinson, we're not really too excited to own Allen Robinson at the moment, but I still think he's a wide receiver 2, 3. So make sure you get him in your lineup. And I guess this is really the only 3 players that I feel comfortable with in my starting lineup from the Bears. Tariq Cohen, he's a low-end RB2 flex, kind of what the heck flex play at best. And his usage hasn't been very good. He just got a really nice contract deal the other day. But looking at the Bears' usages from last week's week 2, David Montgomery played 35 snaps, about 54%. Cohen only 21 snaps, 32%. So I don't really like that much usage for Tariq Cohen. He only had 1 target. I think he only had, 5 carries for 12 yards. So he's really not getting a lot of usage that we want. So I think I'm okay with leaving Cohen on the bench. But it's all about Trubisky, Montgomery, and then Allen Robinson. He still saw 9 targets, only 3 catches for 33 yards. And then David Montgomery's been the one getting the catches, which has been really interesting. So he caught 3 of his targets for 45 yards and a touchdown. So I really like David Montgomery in this one. And then the one thing that really stuck out when looking at these the snaps and the targets were rookie Darnell Mooney, 39 snaps. He was the second most used receiver on the team for 60%. You see Javon Wims down here at 45%, and then Anthony Miller down here with only 26 snaps, 40%. So for some reason, it looks like the Tulane rookie wide receiver Darnell Mooney he topped the depth chart up to number 2. So he ended up catching all three of his targets for 36 yards and the 1 touchdown. So I'm keeping my eye on Darnell Mooney. I think he might be a guy that could have a role that just keeps growing going forward. Anthony Miller didn't catch any of his targets last week, so that was a little bit frustrating. But the Bears are a pretty simple fantasy evaluation. You can use Trubisky as your Superflex QB2. Montgomery's a really steady RB2. And then, go ahead and get Allen Robinson in your lineups as your wide receiver 2 or your 3. And then, monitor Darnell Mooney. We're going to keep an eye on Jimmy Graham. He might be a guy that we can stream later on down the year. He had a really good week 1, not so good week 2. And, Anthony Miller, if he doesn't have a good game this weekend, I think he might be a drop candidate for us. So keep an eye on those players. On the Falcons side of things, Julio Jones, let's take a look at the Atlanta practice reports here. He's been I don't know if he's practiced all week, but look at this full list of injury reports here for the Atlanta Falcons. You're going to see Julio Jones questionable with a hamstring. He did not practice all week. He's going to be a game-time decision going up into the kickoff, I believe. And this is a noon game, so we'll hopefully have an answer, 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, so just make sure you check in on those. But look at all the injury report, the guys that are out. So we got Ricardo Allen, safety. He didn't practice all week. Dante Fowler hasn't practiced Wednesday, Thursday. He got a limited day in on Friday, so maybe he's going to play. Again, Julio Jones, no practice all week. It looks like Alex Mack did not practice. It was a non-injury, so he's going to be okay. Offensive tackle Jake Matthews, it looks like he did practice, limited, full practice, so he should be good to go. But the one guy that I don't know if we're going to get is the offensive tackle Caleb McGarry. He might be out. Tack McKinley, he didn't practice all week. Looks like the cornerback here is out with the foot, Kendall Sheffield. Just a lot of banged up players here for the Atlanta Falcons defense. So I kind of like some of the Bears players that we talked about earlier. But on the Atlanta offensive side of things, you're starting Matt Ryan as your quarterback 1. He looks great as a quarterback 2 in Superflex. I'm a little bit nervous about Todd Gurley, actually, in this one. I don't really know if I trust Todd Gurley as an RB2. I think he's more of a low-end RB2 flex play at best. But last week against the Cowboys, Gurley he got 64% of the snaps, but he didn't get a single target in the game, which was a little bit disappointing. He carried the ball 21 times for 61 yards, but the Bears still have a pretty solid defense. And if we don't really trust Todd Gurley to get receptions anymore, I really don't know how comfortable I am running Gurley out there with a 6 to 10 point floor. So I think he's more of a low-end RB2 flex play. Calvin Ridley's just been on fire. And if Julio Jones doesn't go, he's just going to continue, I think, to get massive targets and a lot of production there. So Calvin Ridley's in your lineups. I think at this point, Russell Gage has to be in our lineups. We look at the reports here. He had 9 targets last week, 6 catches, 46 yards, and the one touchdown. So Julio only had 2 catches last week, so that was a little bit weird. But I think Ridley and Russell Gage, you need to be in your lineups. And then, outside of that, you got Hayden Hurst, who had the really big touchdown play last weekend. He had 8 targets, 5 catches, 72 yards, and 1 score. So that's pretty much all we want. We want Ridley, Gage, and Hurst in our lineups. We're going to monitor Julio Jones. If Julio goes, you'll play him. But if he's not there, make sure you get Russell Gage, Hayden Hurst. These are going to be the other guys that get a lot of targets. So if Julio Jones cannot play, we're going to probably see, I think it's third-year wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus. Probably step into like a third receiver role. They really don't use too many other receivers. These are running backs here. So monitor Julio Jones' status leading up to the game. We'll see about Brian Hill, but we're not trusting the Falcons defense at all. We've seen enough of the Falcons defense. So I think that pretty much covers it. Again, all the start-sit charts are how I feel comfortable with these guys in my lineup. So go ahead and make your decisions with that. The second game we're going to look at here is the Los Angeles Rams at the Buffalo Bills. I'm actually, as far as the noon games, this one probably has the most appeal to me, just from a good football standpoint. The Rams are playing really well. Both teams are 2-0 here. You're probably starting Jared Goff as your quarterback 2 in Superflex. I know the matchup's a little bit tough going up against Buffalo and Tre'Davious White. But you saw Ryan Fitzpatrick, he put up a lot of points against this Buffalo Bills secondary last week. So maybe Jared Goff can get some things going. So he's just a quarterback 2 in Superflex. I think you're starting Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. I might have, if I could, I'd probably put Robert Woods as my wide receiver 3, Cooper Kupp, kind of the same thing. I would assume Robert Woods is going to draw coverage from Tre'Davious White. Maybe Cooper Kupp is the kind of free man running around in the slot in the middle. But both guys can be in your lineups. And the good part about Woods is they use him in the running game too. We got the rushing touchdown last weekend. He kind of had a down game with targets and receptions and yards, but they try to get Robert Woods involved any way they can. So I like both those guys. Tyler Higbee, if you missed out on his 3 touchdown game last week, you're going to make sure he's in your lineup this weekend. So I'm starting Tyler Higbee anywhere you got him. And then the running backs room, it's going to be really interesting. I think Cam Akers has already been ruled out. Let's take a look at the practice reports here for Los Angeles Rams. So nice short list here. It looks like Cam Akers is already ruled out. Malcolm Brown, he had surgery, I think, on his pinky finger, but he's going to be okay. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but full the last 2 days. So Malcolm Brown, he's going to be, he's still kind of the goal line back there. So he's a low-end RB2 flex play. A couple other injuries here, but it looks like this team's relatively healthy. Offensive guard, Joe Boom is not going to be playing, but it looks like everybody else logged practices this week. So it looks like it's Cam Akers out. So with Akers out, Malcolm Brown, low-end RB2. Darrell Henderson, I spelled Henderson wrong. I got to get the O in there. But Henderson was probably a hot waiver wire pickup this week. I think you could use him as your RB2 flex play. If you look at I don't know if I put I'm working on a new article where I do the opportunity reports from everyone the last game that we had full stats on. So I don't know if I got to the Rams on this yet. But we did see Darrell Henderson put up a pretty good game last week. He had, 80 yards receiving. Here, let's take a look and see if I can find his exact stats. But I'm open to Darrell Henderson maybe having some long-term value. We really don't know what's going on with Cam Akers and how long he's going to be out. But Darrell Henderson, on my rewatch of that game, he looked really good last week. He looked really explosive, and he just kind of stuck out as, hey, maybe that we should get this guy the ball a little bit more. So we see 12 carries, 81 yards for 6.8 average, and then the 1 touchdown. And then I think the first touch that actually got me to sit up on the couch, he caught this screen pass, and I think it was maybe for 30 some yards, but he ended up catching 2 for 40. So he's a good receiving threat. He showed some good things with us last year. So I think Darrell Henderson might be the running back to own here for the next couple of weeks. So if you have him, RB2 flex, try to get him in your lineups if you can. And then we're going to continue to monitor the promising rookie Van Jefferson. Josh Reynolds is kind of the number 4. Gerald Everett's not on anyone's radar. So I feel pretty comfortable with these guys here that I have on the left. On the Bills side of things, we're going to see Josh Allen continue to play like an MVP, I think. The Rams defense is solid, so it'll be interesting to see if he targets Jalen Ramsey. would assume Stephon Diggs draws coverage from Jalen Ramsey. So this kind of feels like a John Brown game. John Brown's been on fire for both games this year. He scored a touchdown in both games. He had the game winner basically last week, 100 yards before in week 1. So I like Diggs. I like John Brown in our lineups. Devin Singletary is kind of a must-start RB2 this week because Zach Moss is out. So I can't remember Zach Moss's full injury. Let's see here if we go to the Buffalo Bills practice reports. So Zach Moss is out with a toe. Hopefully he can get him back in a week or two. But it looks like, I mean, Devin Singletary is going to get a full workload of snaps. If we go here and look at the opportunity report from last week when they played against the Dolphins, we saw Devin Singletary get 56% of the snaps, Zach Moss get 46. So I think you're going to probably see Devin Singletary up to maybe 70 to 80% of the snaps this week. Their backups are TJ Yeldon and I'm trying to think of the other guy. Tywan Jones has been there for a while. So you're going to see Devin Singletary step into a little bit bigger role. I think he's a safe RB2 play. And then outside of that, I think Cole Beasley could be a low-end flex play for us if we think they're going to kind of avoid Stephon Diggs with Jalen Ramsey. Maybe John Brown and Cole Beasley are the plays. So Cole Beasley is just like a wide receiver 3 for me in PPR leagues only. The Bills, their defense, I started them in a couple leagues last week, was let down because of the Dolphins' offense, but I really don't know if I trust them again this week. It's at home, so they're kind of a maybe. Again, Zach Moss is out. Dawson Knox, he's probably just left best on the waivers. But it's pretty simple for the Bills. We know who they're going to move the ball to, and we'll see if Devin Singletary can cash in with Zach Moss not being in the game. So, again, I'm really excited about the Rams-Bills, both 2-0 teams. I think this might be one of the better noon games to watch. So enjoy that game if you get it on TV. Now let's look at the Washington football team and the Cleveland Browns. I think this one's actually kind of like a sneaky game because it could go so many different ways. But I think I'm starting Dwayne Haskins as my quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. I just want to show you guys the Browns reports. It's pretty lengthy. So they've already ruled out linebacker Jacob Phillips. They've ruled out Olivier Vernon. They've ruled out Greedy Williams. So that's a lot of players on all levels of the defense. And then starting cornerback Denzel Ward's already questionable with a groin. There's another cornerback, Kevin Johnson, who was kind of limited. I can't remember his injury, but it looks like he logged some full practices. But again, they're missing 3 really good players on defense, and they might be without Denzel Ward. We'll see about Mac Wilson. Just a banged-up defense right now. So I think Dwayne Haskins to Terry McLaurin. I got McLaurin as a wide receiver 1 this week. I think he's going to have a really good game. We'll see if the Browns can put pressure on Haskins, but I just don't see the Browns being able to stop Terry McLaurin this weekend. So he's a wide receiver 1 for me. I really like Antonio Gibson. We saw last week Gibson got the goal line carry. He kind of just dominated the touches. Peyton Barber was non-existent last week. So if we look at the reports here, we're going to see Antonio Gibson with 65% of the snaps, J.D. McKissick 44, and Peyton Barber only played 1 play. So you love to see that if you're a Gibson owner. The one thing I really want to see more from Gibson is more targets and more receptions. He only had 2 targets last weekend, 1 catch for -3 yards, but he's getting the carry. So 13 for 55 yards and a touchdown. So we're going to be looking for him to get, another 12 to 15 carries and hopefully start tacking on 2 to 3 receptions per game. So I like Gibson as a low-end RB2 flex play in PPR leagues. And then outside of that, I mean, it's Logan Thomas. He's a low tight end 1 option. He's still getting targets, 9 targets last week, 4 catches for 26 yards. So that's only 6.6 points, but we're chasing the targets here. If we looked at the Cleveland report here and we're seeing linebackers and linemen and cornerbacks out, I think the offense for the Washington football team might be a little successful. So I'm open to Logan Thomas as my tight end 1 streamer. I have Steven Sims Jr. here listed just because he plays on a lot of snaps. McLaurin was on the field 94% last week, but Sims is on the field a lot, 91%. So he could be a low-end wide receiver 3 play in PPR leagues. I think he's injured right now, though. Let me double-check that. So he's questionable with a toe, did not practice, limited in full practice. So he's probably going to play. But, again, he's probably just like a bottom-of-the-barrel guy. And then, J.D. McKissick, Peyton Barber, Dontrell Inman. We're not using any of those guys. And then maybe start the Washington defense here. Their front 7 is ridiculous. They're going to be able to get pressure on Baker Mayfield. And as we've seen with Baker Mayfield, whenever he gets hit and when he has to kind of, force throws and doesn't have a lot of time to throw, that's when he gets the 2 interception, 3 interception games. So I'm actually open to Washington being able to take down the Browns in Cleveland. And then I guess on the offensive side of things for the Browns, Baker Mayfield's just a low-end quarterback 2 in Superflex. I don't feel great about it. But my narrative all along has been you want the Browns running back. So you're starting Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. They both played fantastic last Thursday night. So you'd be crazy not to get those guys in your lineups. But outside of that, I mean, Odell Beckham, he capitalized on the 43-yard touchdown last weekend. So I think you could use him as your wide receiver 3, but keep in mind it's going to be boom bust. He's either going to get 6.2 points, or he's going to end up with 19 to 20 points. So just roll with Beckham and see what happens. Jarvis Landry was a little bit disappointing last weekend. Let me see if I have the reports here. So Landry only got 3 targets. He caught all 3 of them, thankfully, for 46 yards. So those 7.6 fantasy points, that's okay. I think you can leave him in as your wide receiver 3 flex. Again, if the Washington football team's having a really good pass rush day, they might have to be looking for Landry on the short intermediate routes. So maybe he gets a little bit more targets. We got our first question of the day. Looks like Alligator Feed 11. Deshaun Jackson or Hill? You mean Tyreek Hill? As much as I like Deshaun Jackson, I think you'd be crazy if you weren't able to start Tyreek Hill. I think that's the Hill that you're talking about. But just to finish up the Browns real quick, Austin Hooper, it's not happening for Austin Hooper. We see, only 4 targets, two catches for 22 yards. He's going to be probably droppable pretty soon. Kadarius Hodge is the 4th receiver, Harrison Bryant the backup tight end. So it's pretty simple for the Browns. They're going to run the ball. They're going to try to take deep shots to Odell, and then they're going to pepper Jarvis Landry with short targets. But then on to the next game, the Tennessee Titans and the Minnesota Vikings. Oh man, let's just start with the Minnesota Vikings practice reports. I think this will set the stage for us. So they did lose Anthony Barr for the rest of the season already. And then now they're down Cameron Dantzler, their starting cornerback here, didn't practice all week. He's out with ribs. And then Mike Hughes, he's out with a neck injury, didn't practice all week. Troy Dye, linebacker, out for the season or maybe 3 weeks. They got another cornerback questionable here. So this team is banged up. I really don't think the Vikings defense is going to be able to stop Ryan Tannehill in the play action, Derrick Henry. So I think Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback 1 this week. We did see that A.J. Brown's going to be out. So to me, we're going to continue to start Derrick Henry, no problem. But with A.J. Brown out, you still like Corey Davis as a wide receiver 3. Adam Humphries becomes usable as a wide receiver 3 flex play in PPR leagues, definitely. And then you got Jonnu Smith, who had a big blow-up game last weekend. Let's look at the opportunity report from last week. Just scroll down here, Tennessee Titans. So Derrick Henry, he's locked in and loaded as your R1. We're not trusting any of the other running backs. But on the receiver side of things, you have Corey Davis. He played 81% of the snaps, 5 targets, 3 catches, 36 yards, and a touchdown. So go ahead and keep firing up Corey Davis. Again, the Vikings do not have any starting cornerbacks left. That defense is banged up. Anthony Barr's out of the season now. The number 2 receiver in snaps was Cameron Batson. He only had 2 targets, though, 1 run rushing attempt. So we're not looking at Batson, but we're looking at Adam Humphries. He was in the snaps for 55% of the time. 6 targets, 5 receptions, 48 yards, and the 1 touchdown. So he was their leading target guy on the day last weekend. And just because the Vikings defense is so banged up, I think Adam Humphries could be another guy that catches 5 to 6 balls this week. He should probably be scooped up on your waiver wire. If you're a guy with like Devontae Adams out or Michael Thomas or, even Julio Jones, a lot of these stud receivers are out. You could probably snag Adam Humphries off the waiver wire and see what happens in PPR leagues. And then, Jonnu Smith, he was on the field for 87% of the snaps. He got 5 targets, 4 catches, 84 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So make sure you start Jonnu Smith if you got him. I think the Titans' offense is just going to be really tough to stop for the inexperienced secondary for the Vikings, and they're going to just pound Derrick Henry in their throats. So start your Titans here on the left. Hopefully A.J. Brown can get back next week. It seems like it's not a serious injury. I think he's just got a bruised knee. So I'm thinking they're just being cautious, and we'll see what happens. But on the Vikings side of things, as bad as their defense is, their offense looked like garbage last week. And Kirk Cousins, I think he had 115 yards and maybe 3 picks. Let me see if I have the Vikings on here. I don't know if I do. Yep. Okay. So Kirk Cousins last week, 113 yards and 3 picks. I don't blame you if you don't want to start him this week in Superflex leagues. He's no more than a quarterback 2, but he's a low-end one. But I mean, you're starting Dalvin Cook and Adam Thielen, no doubt, but we really can't trust anybody in this offense besides those two. Ole BC Johnson, still the number 2 receiver there. Justin Jefferson played a little bit better last week than he did in week 1. The tight ends we can't trust. Alexander Madison is just a handcuff for now. So this is probably the one game of the week that, especially for the noon games, I really don't know if I'm going to pay that much attention to. So we'll just kind of be quick with that one. Start your Titans and just pray for Vikings points if you have Dalvin Cook or Adam Thielen. So this is a pretty fun one too. We got the Raiders at the Patriots here. Let's take a look at the 2-0 Las Vegas Raiders. Let's look at their practice reports. Offensive lineman Trent Brown has been ruled out. Linebacker Nick Kwiatkowski has been ruled out. Richie Incognito has been placed on IR, so that's a little bit of a blow for Josh Jacobs owners and the offensive line in general. Henry Ruggs has been ruled out. I saw that this afternoon. So if you were waiting for Ruggs to get in your lineup, looks like we're going to have to wait one more week. He did some nice things on Monday night. They're still not really using him to the full potential, but maybe a week of being healthy and refreshed will do some good things for week 4. Otherwise, this looks pretty fine here on the injury reports. We saw Josh Jacobs and both Aaron Waller did not practice Wednesday, Thursday, but they got in limiteds on Friday. So they should be good to go. So I'm firing up. I mean, you're going to fire up Josh Jacobs. I have a question mark just because he missed those 2 days of practice. But Jacobs and Waller are in our lineups. I think Derek Carr has potential as a quarterback too in Superflex leagues. But I guess with Henry Ruggs out, who are they going to throw the ball to? It's going to be Waller, of course, but maybe Bryan Edwards, Hunter Renfrow. I'm not starting either of those receivers, but I'm interested to see the pecking order of things. And then if anything happens to Josh Jacobs or if he can't play, if he's like a crazy, late game scratch, you're going to want to pick up Devontae Booker. Jalen Richard is going to remain as the third down back. But Devontae Booker would be the primary ball carrier for the Raiders. So I think the Raiders could do a little bit kind of what they did against the Saints. They, not a lot of people expected them to do much against a good Saints defense. And we like the Patriots, but I think the Raiders can do a little bit something in offense. So I'm seeing a question here. From Cali, how you doing, dude? Didn't James Robinson run all over Titans last week? Could have a good week too. Yeah, I definitely think Dalvin Cook could have a good week. I'm just worried about the offense in general. I think they might be put into if we're expecting the Titans, to kind of take advantage of the weak secondary of the Vikings and be able to do what they want on offense. That could force the Vikings to throw a little bit more, but I mean, Dalvin Cook is going to be able to, maybe in the first quarter they just decide to give him the ball again and again and again and see if he can bust one. So I still think Dalvin Cook's in for a good day. I'm kind of lowering my expectations because I think they're gonna try to have to pass the ball a lot, and we'll see what they can do with that. So thank you for the comment, Callie. On the Patriots side of the Raiders game, Cam Newton, I think he's locked and loaded as a quarterback 1 for now. You really can't move him out of there. He looks best as your quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. I had a question next to James White, but unfortunately he's been his parents passing away. Or his father, I think, and his mother survived. But James White is not going to be playing this weekend. So I'm going to probably be moving Rex Burkhead up to RB2 flex status. Rex Burkhead played a lot last weekend, so he's probably going to be the guy that gets the most snaps again. This game probably going to be a little bit tight, so we're going to see Rex Burkhead get a lot of work as the receiving back, and he's got a chance at red zone, touchdowns too. But on the other side of the running game, Sony Michel, we're hoping and praying for a touchdown for Sony Michel. I don't feel confident in him as my RB2 or a flex. Damian Harris, I just have him on the bottom here because he's going to be nearing return pretty soon. So he's a guy, if you have an IR spot and you have the free pickup, just pick up Harris, put him in IR, just wait a week or so. But yeah, we're really not excited about the run game at all. It's all about Cam Newton. He is the goal line back. And then Julian Edelman, man, he had a career high last week, and I think it was 179 yards. So you're excited about getting Edelman in your lineup. I think he survived the week of practice. Let me double check here. So Edelman, he's questionable with the knee. He looked hobbled last Sunday night, but he was able to play through it. So he got limited practices in all week. So we're going to continue to start our guy Julian Edelman as a wide receiver 2, 3 in PPR leagues. But because they were kind of forced to throw so much last weekend, we saw Damiere Byrd have a pretty good game, and N'Keal Harry. Let's just take a look at these utilization reports here. New England Patriots. Did I get those in there? I guess I didn't get those Patriots done yet. But I think both Damiere Byrd and N'Keal Harry can both be flex plays for us, wide receiver 3 flex plays. Damiere Byrd, he also played with Cam Newton in Carolina, so there's a little bit of a chemistry nod there. So I like that. And N'Keal Harry, I mean, I think he had like 9 targets. I think he had maybe 6 catches and 70-some yards. So you're seeing him kind of come on a little bit. I don't know if I'm comfortable starting those guys, but they can be wide receiver 3 flexes. Again, if you're one of the Devontae Adams, Michael Thomas, or Julio Jones owners, you could be looking at a guy like Damiere Byrd off the waiver wire. The defense is startable for the Patriots. And then again, I'm not really trusting Michelle Burkett. I'm probably going to put up into the RB2 status for PPR leagues. But yeah, really nothing else here. The offense is all about Cam Newton and Julian Edelman. So this is a pretty simple fantasy evaluation for this game, but I'm excited. The Raiders have a chance at 3-0. It's on the road in New England, so it should be a tough game. And I don't know, Cam Newton's just so much fun to watch. So enjoy that game if you get that one on TV. The 49ers and the Giants, I think I'm going to be quick about this one because there's just so many damn injuries with both of these teams. You're going to see Nick Mullins starting. He's a quarterback 2 in Superflex if you need the help. With Raheem Mostert out and Tevin Coleman now on IR, Jerick McKinnon steps into the starting role. I don't expect McKinnon to get like goal line or red zone duty, but he's going to catch passes. He's going to probably get 8 to 12 carries. So he can be your RB2 in PPR leagues. And when they do get into the red zone, I mean, if they get into the red zone, we're going to see Jeff Wilson come in and kind of be the banger in between the 20s. And then George Kittle has been ruled out. So we saw Jordan Reed last week rack up 7 catches, 50 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So I think he can be another tight end 1 streamer, especially if you're one of the George Kittle guys, or if you just punted on tight end in the draft. Jordan Reed could be there for you. And then the 49ers defense, I have it listed as startable. I mean, they're just banged up a lot too. If we look at their practice reports, they're missing a lot of starters, man. Dee Ford's going to be out. Dre Greenlaw, Jason Verrett, he got full practices in, so he's probably going to be their starting corner. But then their opposite corner, Witherspoon here, he's kind of limited with a hamstring. So we'll see what happens there. Again, Richard Sherman's still not playing. Joey Bosa, or is it Nick Bosa? Nick Bosa has been put on IR. So just too many injuries in this game where I really don't – I don't feel comfortable with any of the pass catchers besides Jordan Reed. I think they're going to just try to run the ball down the Giants' throat and see what happens. And then on the Giants side of things, life without Saquon Barkley, you have Daniel Jones being forced to throw, I think, a little bit more. He's a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. Golden Tate, Evan Ingram, Darius Slayton, all these guys can be in your lineups. They just added Devonta Freeman, so I don't really know. I mean, he's been there, for 2 days? We're probably not starting Devonta Freeman this weekend, so I think Dion Lewis could be a low-end RB2 flex play. Sterling Shepard's been put on IR. There's not another receiver that we're looking at there, so that's why I like Golden Tate and Darius Slayton as wide receiver 3 flexes. But yeah, this game, I don't want to pay attention to it. So we'll move on to the next one. We got the Bengals and the Eagles. This one's pretty simple as well. Joe Burrow, man, he's a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. Joe Mixon's RB2, and Tyler Boyd, came to life last weekend. So I like Tyler Boyd as my wide receiver 3 in PPR leagues. It was unfortunate to see CJ Uzomah go on IR with the torn ACL last weekend. I was really liking Uzomah. I had him picked up in a couple of leagues. I was kind of into him. But then we see Drew Sample come in the second half and rack up, 7 or 8 catches or something like that. So he's going to be a high-volume guy. He's not a very athletic tight end. He's kind of like he's kind of like a Nick Boyle for the Ravens. He's just a really strong blocking tight end, and he's got good hands. He showed some good hands last Thursday night, but you could probably pick him up and stream him as a tight end in PPR leagues. So you're starting Burrow, Mixon, Boyd, and AJ Green for sure, and then maybe Drew Sample. I was really encouraged by these snap counts last weekend here. Let's pull these up. So for the receivers, you see Tyler Boyd with 78 snaps. T. Higgins gets the start with 60 snaps, so it's 65%. AJ Green was the next most used. Mike Thomas with 35%. It seems like John Ross has kind of fallen out of favor, so I'm thinking we're going to see more T. Higgins going forward, so I'm kind of excited about that. So that's really the only thing that I saw from the snaps and the targets. But yeah, pretty simple for the Bengals. Gio Bernard's not in our lineups, but keep an eye on T. Higgins. If he has a good game this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised. And then on the Eagles side of things, we just saw with the Cleveland Browns were able to do against the Bengals defense. We should be pretty excited about our Eagles this weekend. You're starting Carson Wentz as your quarterback one, best used as a quarterback two in Superflex leagues. But Miles Sanders is set up nicely here to be maybe the overall RB1 this week. So I love Miles Sanders. You're starting Zach Ertz. You're starting Dallas Goedert if you can. And then Deshaun Jackson. I really think Deshaun Jackson hit pretty well last weekend. We don't trust the Bengals defense at all. So I like Deshaun Jackson as a wide receiver 3 flex. And because I think the Eagles offense might just be humming along and playing really well, I'm kind of interested in Boston Scott as a low-end RB2 flex leagues if you're really desperate. So unfortunately, we saw Jalen Reagor be placed on IR, so we'll see if JJ Arcega-Whiteside, Greg Ward, one of those two guys makes plays. But the exciting part here about the Eagles practice reports was Alshon Jeffrey returned to practice. So he's not playing this weekend, but the fact that he got in 2 limited practices this weekend makes him on track to play next week. So if Alshon Jeffrey's available, and you have the open space on the bottom of your roster, especially if you have an IR spot. I was able to slide Alshon Jeffrey into my IR spot and just see what happens. So make sure he's not, just hanging around your waiver wires. It looks like he's going to play next weekend, but nothing too crazy here for the practice reports. It looks like Deshaun Jackson got full practices in. So yeah, pretty healthy overall for the Eagles besides Jalen Reagor, of course. So I just think the Eagles offense is going to be humming along and probably looking the best they have through 3 weeks. So enjoy the Bengals and the Eagles. And I think this is our last game of the noon slate. I think tomorrow afternoon, maybe in the morning, I think maybe around 11 o'clock, I'm probably going to go live and we'll talk about the rest of the games on Sunday. We'll talk about Sunday night and talk about Monday night. So check those out tomorrow. But yeah, the last game of the noon slate is the Houston Texans and the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Deshaun Watson, man, if you draft him as your quarterback one, you got to be a little bit nervous in this one. So that's why I have him listed as a quarterback 2. I'd start Ryan Tannehill over Deshaun Watson. There's probably a couple other decisions that might be tough, but I'm kind of lowering my expectations for Deshaun Watson this weekend. Hey, what's up, Brady Schaefer? How's it going? Montgomery, we got a question here. Let me answer this quick. So David Montgomery, Devin Singletary, or Mike Davis in the flex. Is this a PPR league? I'm assuming it is a PPR league. I think if these are your 3 options, I think you're probably going to be pretty good either way. So David Montgomery, he's going to play the Atlanta Falcons at home. I think his pass catching usage has been pretty nice last weekend. He did catch the touchdown. So yeah, it is PPR leagues. And then the thing with Devin Singletary is now Zach Moss is not going to be playing. It's a little bit tougher matchup against the Rams. So I'm probably ranking Montgomery over Singletary. And then the thing with Mike Davis is, the thing about Davis was when he got into the game last week in the 4th quarter, they were down, 2 or 3 touchdowns, and all they had to do was throw the ball. So I think everyone's looking at those 8 catches and the 70 whatever yards as a really big deal. But we'll see if he can get, up to that for a whole game. And I think they're going to probably call up a couple of other running backs too. So we'll see about that. But I think David Montgomery is probably your safest bet. If you wanted to be a little bit risky, you could play Mike Davis. But I think Montgomery is probably the one that I feel the best about. The Falcons defense is really banged up. Julio Jones might not play. We just don't trust the Falcons defense. So I think Montgomery is probably the way that I would roll with that one. And then I guess back to the Houston Texans and the Steelers. We talked about Deshaun Watson a little bit ago. Will Fuller, he's technically still healthy, so I think you got to trot him out as your wide receiver 3 flex. But I'm just really nervous about all my Houston Texans this weekend. The one guy that I was kind of optimistic about, though, was Jordan Akins. He caught all 7 of his targets last weekend for, I think it was 50-some yards, maybe it was 56 yards. So I'm picking Jordan Akins up in a lot of leagues as my second tight end, and we're just going to keep an eye on his development. David Johnson, we know teams can't really run the ball on the Steelers, so we'll see if David Johnson can rack up some PPR points to kind of salvage the day. So I kind of have him. He's more of a low end RB2. He probably looks best as a flex play, but I wouldn't. If you had to bench David Johnson for somebody, I think I'd be okay with that. And then Brandon Cooks, we saw Brandon Cooks kind of step up with Will Fuller being not himself last weekend. I don't know. Let me see the Texans reports here. So Brandon Cooks led the team in snaps last weekend, 53 snaps, 90%. He also led them in targets, 8 targets, 5 catches, 95 yards. So I think you're starting Brandon Cooks if you got him as your wide receiver 3 flex. And again, we have no clue. I mean, Will Fuller was kind of seen on the sides getting his hamstring looked at. So hopefully we can get some targets for Will Fuller and see what happens here. But Randall Cobb's kind of the interesting guy too, because Will Fuller's already kind of on the shelf. And Randall Cobb's going to be super steady in a PPR league. So we see 5 catches, 59 yards. We got another question real quick here, and thanks. And John Brown or Tyler Boyd? So I'm actually kind of really bullish on John Brown this week. Think about how the Los Angeles Rams are going to try to defend the Buffalo Bills. Jalen Ramsey's probably going to be drawing coverage with Stephon Diggs. So I would imagine that John Brown could be the guy that ends up leading the team in targets. And just because he's got, Tyler Boyd's more of the safer PPR play. So if you want to go with the safe PPR play, I get it. But I think John Brown's got, he's got a potential boom week where he could, get 8 to 9 targets, go over 100 yards, and he can catch a touchdown or two. And then I just saw a quote I think it was this morning, that John Brown saying he's never had more fun playing football in his career. So I'm just a huge John Brown fan. And I think if you're not going to start Singletary, it might be kind of fun to get a Bill in the lineup. So I think I'm starting John Brown over Tyler Boyd, but it can go either way. Do you want to risk the potential upside of John Brown, or do you just want to kind of lock in the 12 to 14 free points with Tyler Boyd? But I think I like to root for John Brown, so I think that's where I would go with that one. Thanks for the questions, man. Where we were on the Texans, we're monitoring Darren Fells. Duke Johnson might play. Kenny Stills, Kiki Cutie. These guys aren't in our lineups at all. But I'm open to Fuller as my wide receiver 3. I think you got to get Cookson as your wide receiver 3. And Randall Cobb might be a guy that's hanging around your waiver wire. Again, if you're like one of the Michael Thomas owners or Julio Jones or Devontae, check and see if Randall Cobb's available. He might be kind of fun to just plug in for 10 to 12 points. But for overall, we're getting nervous about these Houston Texans on our fantasy teams. So on the Steelers side of things, I think you got to start Ben Roethlisberger as your quarterback 1. He looks fantastic as a quarterback 2 in Superflex leagues. You're starting James Conner. I think I used a fantasy, or it's FF today. And then if you hit stats here, you can look on the bottom and it says fantasy, and then you're going to see fantasy points allowed here. So we're just going to click on fantasy points allowed to running backs. And you're going to see, if we filter here by PPR, you're going to see the Texans are, they're 9th worst against the running backs here. So they've allowed, filter this by yards. They've allowed the 3rd most rushing yards to running backs this season, over 300, 2 touchdowns, and they've allowed a touchdown catch, 6 catches. So I'm really into James Conner this weekend. He's probably one of my favorite plays. He's probably a top 5 running back this weekend. So make sure you get James Conner in your lineup. Texans defense just can't really compete, I think, with this passing game either. So you're starting Juju, Deontay Johnson. I rewatched that Steelers Broncos game from week 2. Deontay Johnson is just running routes that it's just beautiful to watch. He's so fluid and flexible, and he's able to get into space. So Deontay Johnson's locked in. I think he's a wide receiver 2 this weekend. And then one guy, if you really needed a tight end, I think you could throw out Eric Ebron maybe for 7 or 8 points. You're starting the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. That's probably one of the best defenses in fantasy football right now. And then we're just going to monitor guys on the bench. If you picked up Benny Snell the weekend that James Conner got hurt, you got to hold on to Snell. There's a reason why we picked him up. It's to handcuff James Conner. So if anything happens to Conner, just keep holding on to Snell. Chase Claypool had that awesome, a 75-yard touchdown or something like that. So I'm keeping an eye on Chase Claypool. If he keeps making plays, he might be on our radar soon. But yeah, Jalen Samuels, Vance McDonald, James Washington, they're all fine players, but we're not really using them for fantasy just yet. So I think the Steelers offense, they're going to have their way with this team. Defensively, they're going to have their way with the Texans. And we're probably looking at an 0-3 Texans squad. And I don't know, I'm just kind of really hesitant to get any of my Texans in the lineups this weekend. So that's pretty much it for all of the noon games. If you have, I guess I want to thank everyone for listening. We got a couple questions in the chat room today. I'm going to be coming live. I'm probably going to schedule a live thing for either 10:30 or 11 o'clock tomorrow. And we'll look through my start-sit charts for the Sunday late games, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. So I'll be doing that tomorrow morning. And we'll cover all the practice reports and some other things that I'm looking at. But yeah, for now, thank you for joining me on a Friday evening. Have a good night, and we'll see you in another video. Peace.